Hello, Crosslink family and friends. My name is Billy Lee, and I want to take a moment to say thank you for joining into our service here today, whether in-house or online. Our prayer and hope is that you are encouraged and challenged throughout today's service. Before we get started, I want to take a moment to let you know some announcements and share with you about some of the things going on here around Crosslink. First of all, there's going to be a number that's going to pop up below me. That number is an avenue in which you can get connected to Crosslink and also us get connected to you. A couple different ways we can use that. First off, if this is your first time ever joining into Crosslink at any capacity, text the word NEW to that number and we will be able to get information from you about who you are, but also get you connected to Crosslink's texting service where we let you know about different opportunities and things going on around Crosslink, service times, all that stuff. So please let us know who you are so we can get connected to you in that way. If you have a need, we recognize there are multiple needs within our community, needs within our own congregation. Please text the word needs to that number, and we would love, whether it's a physical need, a spiritual need, whatever kind of needs you have, would love to get connected with you so we can help meet that need. If you would like to give, ultimately you're giving to God, but if you'd like to give to Crosslink and what God is doing here, text the word give to that number and we'll be able to get you the information on the ways in which you can give to our church. If you would like to take the next step and join the next wave of servant leaders here at Crosslink, we text the word serve to that number and we'll be able to get you connected to the ministry leader over the area in which you would like to serve. So please join us in that. The mission statement here at Crosslink is to prize Jesus, make disciples, and love others well. We pray that you are impacted and you see that that mission comes clearly through our services here today. Thank you again for joining us.
Weapon may be formed, but it won't prosper. When the darkness falls, it won't prevail. 'Cause the God I serve knows only how to triumph. Oh, my God will never fail. Oh, my God will never fail. And I'm gonna see victory. I'm gonna see victory. For the battle belongs to you, Lord. I'm gonna see victory. I'm gonna see victory. For the battle belongs to you, Lord. There's power in the mighty name of Jesus. Every war he wages, he will win. Yes, he will. And I'm not backing down from any giant. 'Cause I know how this story ends. Come on, church. We all know how this story ends. And I'm gonna see victory. I'm gonna see victory. For the battle belongs to you, Lord. Yes, it does. So I'm gonna see victory. I'm gonna see victory. For the battle belongs to you, Lord. We will see victory. Sing this with me. You take what the enemy meant for evil, and you turn it for good. You turn it for good. You take what the enemy meant for evil and you turn it for good. Yes, you do. You turn it for good. Oh, you take what the enemy meant for evil and you turn it for good. You turn it for good. Oh, you take what the enemy meant for evil and you turn it for good. You turn it for good. And I'm gonna see a victory. I'm gonna see a victory. For the battle belongs to you, Lord. And I'm gonna see a victory. I'm gonna see a victory. For the battle belongs to you, Lord. Oh, you take what the enemy meant for evil and you turn it for good. Yes, you turn it for good. Oh, you take what the enemy meant for evil and you turn it for good. You turn it for my good. We trust you, Jesus. Oh, you're up to good, yeah. And I'm gonna see a victory. I'm gonna see a victory. For the battle belongs to you, Lord. I'm gonna see a victory. I'm gonna see a victory. For the battle belongs to you, Lord. Jesus at the center of it all. Jesus at the center of it all. From beginning to the end, it will always be, it's always been you, Jesus. Jesus, sing that with me. Jesus at the center of it all. Jesus at the center of it all. From beginning to Jesus, be the center of my life. From beginning to the end, it will always be, it's always been you, Jesus. Jesus, nothing else matters. Nothing in this world will do. No, no, no. Jesus, you're the center. Everything revolves around you. Jesus, you. From my heart to the heavens, Jesus, be the center. It's all about you. Yes, it's all about you. From my heart to the heavens, Jesus, be the center. It's all about you. Yes, it's all about you. From my heart to the heavens, Jesus, be the center. It's all about you. Yes, it's all about you. From my heart to the heavens, Jesus, be the center. It's all about you. Yes, it's all about you. Jesus, be the center of your church. Jesus, be the center of your church. And every knee will bow, and every tongue shall confess you, Jesus. Jesus, sing it with me. Jesus, Jesus, oh Jesus. Jesus, we sing Jesus, 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 oh Jesus, nothing else matters. Nothing in this world will do no more. 'Cause Jesus, you're the center, and everything revolves around you. Jesus, you at the center of it all. The center of it Holy, 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 Lord God Almighty. Early in the morning, our song shall rise to thee. Holy, 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 merciful and mighty, God in three persons,
All right. Hey, I would like to welcome all of you who are watching this Thursday night. We are so encouraged that you are here. We hope that you enjoy and grow from what it is that we are going to be talking about here this evening. For those of you who are watching on Sunday morning, either in-house or online, thank you so much for watching this. We started a series last week called How's Your Soul? And this is just one of the second week into this. If you were here last week, we discussed how Jesus is a safe place for your bruised and battered soul. And so this week, what we'd like to do is just let you know that you're not alone. And that people have walked through similar situations, that all of us have had dark night of the souls, that all of us have struggled with certain things in our life. And we just want people to know when we deal with how's your soul, that you're not alone. And I think the best way to do that is just to share some stories from those who have walked through some difficult things. And so we're excited about this. I have Melissa here with me, and she is stoked as well to walk through this. And I invited her because she has been a nurse for the past 8 years, right? And so she's been in the medical community, and she has also kind of co-founded an organization called Together We Live, which works with and helps those who have been addicts or families who are walking through addiction. And so I just wanted to hear a little bit of her insight and what she could kind of help us out with here this evening or this morning. And then I'm going to invite up in a little bit David and Jen Stoudemire. So I just have a few questions for you that we can just discuss. And I know 2020 has been difficult for a lot of people. And so my first kind of question is, when it comes to addiction and basically everything that fits in that drawer, what kind of impact has 2020 had on that?
It's had a horrible impact. And when all the figures come out after everything is recorded for 2020, the Center for Disease Control and Prevention, the CDC, is saying that 2020 is going to be the deadliest drug overdose death year for the United States since they've started recording the stats. So
a lot of people are walking through dark periods of time right now.
Yes, absolutely. And they are attributing it to COVID because there's been so much fear, anxiety, isolation. People haven't been able to get the resources they need or get to the resources they need. And it's so unprecedented because we've never been through this before. So it's just kind of thrown people alone.
Yeah. So usually you have people that walk through addiction, and a lot of times when they end up there, they walk through something tragic in their life or something unprecedented happened. Well, we just walked through an entire year that was unprecedented. So whether it comes to job loss, like you mentioned, isolation, which I think a lot of people have felt. And I think sometimes we feel like we're better in isolation alone, but I think this has proven otherwise, that we need people. Can you help us understand maybe the mind and emotions that are factored into someone walking through addiction? What are some struggles that they have, or maybe some things that they don't want to talk about and bring to the table because they just want people to know?
Well, first and foremost, I can only speak from medical experience, assessments, observations, things like that, because I've not personally been through it. So it's difficult when people say, what is an addict going through? What is their mindset? What is their emotion? Because I've not experienced that. But mind block. So I think it's important that anytime there's a discussion about addiction, that someone or people in recovery are part of the discussion. We can only speculate from a medical perspective what they're going through. What I've seen and what I've heard and what a specific addict told me one time was struggling in addiction is like being trapped in your own personal hell by yourself, which obviously I cannot imagine that, but it helps me have empathy for addicts that are struggling. Does that make sense?
No, it absolutely does. And I think you made a good point that it works itself out differently in everyone's life. And I just can't imagine feeling that in such a place where you're just suffocating, you feel alone, and you feel like you just can't get out of it. And I think that's the story for so many that I've heard. Just they have tried to white knuckle it, and it doesn't work. And they've tried so many other options, and it just doesn't work. And they find themselves just continuing in this tug of war. And so I guess one of my questions is, and I know that you can only speak from what you've heard from other people or medically, but you have two sides of things when it comes to addiction. That some people believe, well, it's just an excuse. That you have your type A personalities that feel like they can get themselves out of it, or they'll never go into it. And so, like, how do you deal with people like that struggle of it's just an excuse? So no, it's a real thing. It is gripping to a soul level.
I'll say from a medical perspective, I firmly believe that addiction is a disease, and it's categorized by different medical entities as a disease. But at this point in time, it doesn't matter how someone gets to where they are, or the fact that they can't get out of it. What matters is people are dying, and at a rapid rate. From 2020, the numbers that have come out so far across the United States, and a lot of states have only reported the first 3 months or the first 6 months, but the increase in overdose rates 2020 compared to 2019 are anywhere from 25 to 98%. Franklin County Coroner's Office released the first 6 months. They released that in October. In Franklin County alone, the deaths from overdose, the rate has increased by 73%.
Wow.
So whether or not you believe it's a disease, whether or not you believe it's a choice, the fact is people are dying, and we need to figure out how to help people.
Do you think more people are battling a type of addiction than are willing to confess?
Oh, absolutely.
I think it's something that we try to keep hidden to defeat on our own.
Well, and with addiction being a neurologic disorder, it's not just drugs, alcohol. It could be sex. It could be gambling. It could be anything. It's just that neurologic path that addiction follows.
It just rewires your brain. I know, being a pastor, and once again, just speaking from my experience, just watching people walk through just those dark times and how it literally has rewired how they view things, and how they participate in things. And I think some people battle getting out of addiction because there's not a lot of help.
Right.
Sometimes, like, who do you reach out to?
Right.
For some people, they're just like, well, here, call this number. Right, maybe they'll help you. Like, we're just, as a church is concerned, I don't think we're always equipped to be able to help people walk through the intensity that they need to get out of the grips of addiction sometimes.
Well, there's a lot of other factors: mental illness, PTSD, trauma. I mean, there are a lot of things that go into addiction as well. So it is complex.
Wow. For those of you who are watching, we just want to encourage you. If you're battling any type of addiction, and please reach out. We'll have information for you in-house and online. If you want to talk to someone, need to reach out so we can just point you in the right direction, because you're not alone. So many people currently battling and have battled addiction. And so what we wanted to do with this series is, once again, let you know that you're not alone, and that when it comes to the health of our soul, we need to talk about these things that maybe the church doesn't talk about enough. I mean, when you say that addiction is maybe not something we talk about enough.
Well, it carries a lot of stigma still,
Yeah.
which to me, stigma is discrimination. But
That's a good
it's just
point.
like people that view addiction as a choice. One thing I would say is the biggest thing you can do to help an addict, or to help the family of an addict, or whatever it might be, is to get educated on addiction,
Okay.
because that's one thing that causes a lot of stigma.
Okay. Well, you're not alone, and so please reach out for help. But what we want to do to let you know you're not alone is that we have a couple that I'm going to invite up, David and Jen Stoudemire, who you all know. They've been a part of us here. Actually, all three of them have been a part of Crosslink longer than I have. So, but you guys know very much both Melissa and David and Jen. So I'm excited to hear their story. But we invited them in for evidence of what God can do, as well as to encourage you if you're walking through something like this, that you're not alone, and there are people who have walked that before you and will walk that with you. And so we're just gonna hear your story. So it's yours.
Okay. My name is Jen, and I have been sober for 7.5 years. And one thing that I think I really like about me and David's story is that before we met each other, before we even did drugs, our situation was so much different than each other. So I guess you could say came from each side of the tracks. So, and I think that's important because there's so much judgment surrounding addiction. And when you see that two lives can be completely different, polar opposites, but we ended up in the same place, I think can be really helpful in connecting people and eliminating the, it can't happen to me, it can't happen in my neighborhood, it can't happen in the suburbs. If you go to college, you're not going to be a drug addict, yada, yada. So I think that's one thing I really like about our story and our past, and then how we came together. So I'll start because I always start. Once he gets the microphone, then it's a wrap. So, I guess I came from a very good family. We're very close, pretty big family, and all of us went to college. That was like a stipulation I felt like growing up. So kind of high expectations. I did go to church just here and there on Sundays with my grandparents, Catholic church. Hated it. Hated the way I felt when I walked in. I went to catechism classes and ended up not being able to finish because my family couldn't afford it. And I felt like that everybody was judging me for that as well. So I always felt like I was being judged. Whether that's the truth or not, I don't know. It's just how I felt. I never felt good enough, and you'll hear a lot of addicts say that. You always felt different. You always felt out of place, changed like a chameleon. Anyone I was around, that's how I acted. And when I look back now in my story, I can see where I had addictive behaviors way before I ever used or drank. I was really into soccer, and so everything was about that. So it was like everything I took in addictively. And you can think of things like playing sports or school or any kind of healthy behavior. You can think of that as oh, well, how can that be bad? But the thing about it was I was using that to cover up whatever else was going on internally. So that's kind of how my childhood went. I mean, I just completely threw. I started drinking when I was in high school. We had parties, I partied, but nothing crazy. And then I went to college at Ohio State, and I was there to get my teaching degree. And I started experimenting with drugs, but once again, nothing addictive, weekend kind of things. Definitely it was out of control, but I didn't feel what I felt later on in my story with opiates and heroin. So totally two different feelings, but you could tell I was on the road there. So I started, I graduated from college and was teaching and had my son Jackson, who's now 14. And I started experimenting with pain pills. I wish I was one of those people that could pinpoint exactly when that happened, but I don't remember. I just know that it gradually increased to I had to have it every day. If I did not have it, I was sick. I had to have it to do fun things, and I had to have it to do scary things. It helped me with every feeling I was encountering. definitely, it was taking over my life. Finances. I started doing things that, very shameful things. I won't get into details with that, but just things so that I could always have that drug. I met David, and he was already using heroin. I was still just using pain pills. And it wasn't too far into meeting him that I realized that I was kind of supporting his habit, and that I realized I couldn't support both of our habits. So I do remember the day I told him, well, then I want to try what you're doing. So that's when I started using heroin. And that path is a very scary path. It's a very lonely path. Like Melissa was saying, you feel like you're a prisoner, that you can't get out of it. You want to so badly because it's not fun. People, sometimes I feel like people look at addicts like, oh, all they do is party all day and all they do is get high and have fun. But there's absolutely nothing fun about it. You're rarely getting high. You're more getting well, is what we call it. And you will do anything and everything, and I do mean anything and everything, to get your drug. And that's a very scary place to be. At this time, my son was around 5, and I was not really being the mother that I had been to him. Even using pain pills, I was still, in my mind, I was still being a good mom. We were still doing things. I was still there. I stopped being there. I had to be wherever the drugs were. And I think in protective mode, I was having him away from that. So that meant that me and him were not around each other as much as we had been. My family was very observant, and they were on to it. And especially when me and Jackson's dad had split. So they did an intervention on me, and they gave me some pretty tough ultimatums. And I remember sitting on a couch in a house that was basically just for using. And I remember sitting there, and they called me and they said, okay, now it's time to make your decision. What are you going to do? You're either going to do this, or all these things are going to happen. And they were really scary ultimatums. But getting sober or walking away from drugs was very scary, because I knew how physically ill I would be on top of anything else. But I did make that decision. And at this time, I will say that I had my back towards God. I believed in God, but I just didn't believe it was for me. So I kind of learned later on it's kind of like an agnostic title. So that's kind of what I felt like I was. So I had nothing to do with God. I really didn't like, and what I titled at that time, church people, because I felt like they thought they were better than me, and I didn't think I measured up to them. So I was very empty inside, and the drugs kind of filled that to an extent to where I could kind of walk in my own skin. So I was afraid to walk away from the only thing that made me feel like a person, even though I definitely felt like a shell of a person. But I did, and so I walked away from David. I walked away from the drugs, from the needles, from the heroin, from all of that, and I walked out the door. And my brother tried to get me into treatment. And as you guys mentioned earlier about it being hard to get into, this was almost 8 years ago, and I had no health insurance, like most heroin addicts do not. And we couldn't find anywhere. So I ended up, my brother put me up in a hotel room, and that's where I detoxed on my own. And the next day, he did take me into his house, and they found a place down in South Carolina that you did not have to have insurance. You just had to have the first month down. And my family put that together. And on day 3 of my detox, I got on an airplane and flew down to South Carolina. And I spent 9 months. I spent 4 months as a resident. I completed the program, and then I decided to stay 5 months so that I just didn't feel like I was ready to come home. And I actually lived on site and for the next 5 months and did exactly what I was supposed to do. I mean, If they told me to jump, I said, please tell me how high. And that's how I took my recovery. This is also where I started letting God into my life. It was a program based on AA. So it wasn't like a spiritual program per se, but AA is a spiritual program. So, and I didn't know that at the time. So every Sunday they would have a bus that would come and take you to church. And every Sunday I was like one of 3 people that did not go. I refused to go. That wasn't my thing. You weren't going to trick me, type of thing. So, and then one Sunday, I do not know why, but I got on that bus, and that's where my journey with God started. I still wouldn't talk about Jesus. I wasn't there yet. God seemed more, it was like a bigger picture for me. I wasn't ready to really focus in on the details of everything. It wasn't until I found Crosslink that I, started to really get closer to God and then more in tune with Jesus. So, and that is what I call my higher power today. So, but just a few things. Today, actually, when I was sitting in service, a lot of things, Pastor Jeremy, that you were saying, I was thinking about the day I left for treatment and how scared I was. And, my heart started beating. I was like, oh my gosh, am I going to pass out? I just got really, my breathing was really, I was just thinking about that day and how scary that was, and how I walked away from David, who was my safe place. I walked away from Jackson. I know you're looking at me because I always cry when I talk about Jackson. And I was really scared. But now when I look back on it, I know that God had me. He had put the people, places, and things in my path. And he knew I was going to be all right. I did not know that, but I somehow trusted something enough to get me there. And, yeah. So then I left David at home, and every day I prayed for him that he was going to be okay. All right, your turn.
Okay, so I am a stereotypical junkie. I grew up in a not so great neighborhood. I grew up right next door to what narcotics officers had told me was the first crack house in Columbus when crack hit the streets back in the 80s. The things I seen growing up, using, drinking, that was normal. That's just what people did. So I didn't know anything outside of that. I remember when I was very young, my dad drank a lot, and I can remember him doing some pretty stupid things. My brother and I seeing things that, no kids should see. And those images, even from being 3-4 years old, I can still see those things today, just like it was yesterday. And so, as far as I knew, he only drank. I was very scared of becoming like that, so I refused to drink for the longest. It wasn't what I wanted. But as I was growing up, I got to be. I had what I thought was a normal childhood. Looking back, it was anything but. But where I come from, it was normal for where I grew up. It was a normal childhood, but it's not something that I strive to give our children. And so I don't know, early teens. I was a fat kid. I know, big surprise. Look at me now. There was a period in between my fat periods where I was actually pretty small. From the drugs, obviously. But I didn't fit in. No one wanted to be friends with the fat kid. I was big when elementary, middle school. I was always twice the size of other kids my age. And everyone seemed to either be intimidated by me or you just don't want to be friends with the fat kid, and which is the way kids are. I get it. So I always felt alone. I had I had my brother who is 11 months younger than I am, and he was my best friend. We did everything together. The majority of our lives up until I left to go to rehab. And outside of him, I really didn't have many friends. I didn't have people to hang out with. I did a lot of sitting in my room, watching TV, playing video games. That was what I did. The first time that I drank and smoked weed, that went away. I wasn't intimidated by people. I wasn't shy. I was more outgoing. It just kind of gave me a feeling of being normal, like everyone else was around me, and I wanted more of that. Say that is a lot of people, and including myself, will say addiction is a disease of more, because there's never enough. And as soon as I had a taste of that feeling of being normal, that's what I wanted. I wanted to always have that feeling. And so my drug use quickly escalated, from just drinking every once in a while, smoking weed every day. That was something that 14-year-old me truly enjoyed. It went from that to cocaine, crack, opiates, and then to heroin. And the first time I tried heroin, I was 18-ish, and it was like falling in love. That was the ultimate feeling. That was what I had been searching for my whole life. Everything just seemed to fall in place, and I maintained for probably 6 months to a year, where I seemed to be normal. I dropped out of high school when I was 16, and got a full-time job. And all the guys that I worked with were, in their early mid-20s, and they partied hard. That's what construction workers do. And they invited me into that. And so I'm 15, 16 years old, and I'm partying with these older guys. I'm doing what they're doing, and eventually what they were doing wasn't enough for me. And that was when I found heroin. And it didn't, after that first year, I am a skilled tradesman, so it's very easy for me to find a job. But when you're on something like heroin, I could find a job anywhere, but I couldn't keep a job anywhere. I could work for a week or so, but then those days would come where I wouldn't have that shot in the morning to be able to get up out of bed and be able to function that day, and I would not go to work because I just physically couldn't do it. That's what addiction does. Is it takes your life before it kills you, and that is most definitely what had happened to me. Everything in my life revolved around that chase, and I say, being addicted to drugs to that extent is a 25-hour-a-day job. There's never any off time. It's a constant grind, and it's not fun at all. As glamorous as it may seem on TV, or or easy as a life that may seem, I never worked harder than when I was using. It was always that fear of being sick, because withdrawing, detoxing, that is a feeling, a pain that that is hard to put into words. So I would do whatever I needed to, lie, cheat, steal, manipulate, and I was decent at it. It got me by for over 10 years shooting heroin every day. And I never thought that my life would be any more than that. I had made peace with the fact that I was going to die with a needle in my arm. And I didn't think twice about it. It didn't seem like a big deal to me. And then, I met Jen, and, looking back, I know exactly what it was when I met her, but at the time I didn't. I seen her, and there was just something clicked in my head. I have to be with her. And as a drug addict, if you set your mind to do something, you're going to do it. And so, it took a couple weeks of constant persistence. So we get together, start dating, which, I had so much to offer her, being homeless and strung out. It was amazing. Who wouldn't want to be with me? But it worked out, and being sober for over 6 years, when I look back, I know exactly what it was. That was God put her in my life that day. One, because I truly believe she is the person that He made for me. But two, because He knew that when that time came and it was time for me to make a change, there was going to be one person that I would hear Him through. Many people had told me many times that I was, better than what I was doing. And I just shrugged it off. My parents, people who had known me since I was a child, plenty of people had told me. But I didn't care. I didn't hear it. It went in one ear and out the other. But after Jen left and went to treatment, and she did. She called me just about every day. Honestly, I think just to make sure that I was still alive. I remember the conversation we had on the phone, and she told me, that I was worth a lot more than I gave myself credit for, and that I could be so much more. And in that moment, I heard that, and it was like a light switch went off in my head. And that's what I wanted, was to be more, to be better. And so it took a lot, and it took about it took a few more weeks, but she helped me get into treatment where she was at. And I stayed pretty self-medicated, waiting for that day to come, and so I get on a Greyhound bus to go to Florence, South Carolina, which is a 25-hour trip on a Greyhound. And I can remember getting on the bus downtown and waking up in West Virginia thinking, what the heck am I doing? I was starting to detox, and the next 20 hours were pretty rough. And so when I got there, I was miserable. When I got there, I just wanted to leave. I just wanted to not be sick. And I did everything possible that I could think of to get kicked out of that place, because no one was helping me get back home. If I left on my own, I in my addict mind, I thought, well, maybe somebody will help me if they make me leave. And nothing I did worked. No matter what I did, they didn't kick me out. So I said, by this time I'm 2 weeks in, and I might as well put some effort in. And I did. And when I put in just a little bit of effort, I got a lot in return. And so, they gave me the AA Big Book when I got there. And I seriously threw it back at the girl that handed it to me and said, well, what is this supposed to do for me? It's a book. When I was growing up, my grandmother took me to church every week when I was a child. When I was 12, 13 years old, I actually went on my own. And, I had a decent relationship with God before drugs and alcohol came into the picture. And then His way was fine, but my way was more fun. And I never. A lot of addicts and alcoholics will have resentments towards God, or they'll say God turned His back on them. And for me, it was never like that. I knew exactly what I was doing. I knew that He wanted more for me, but I didn't want to go that way because it wasn't fun. I wanted to do it my way, and so when they started talking to me about God, at that point, I had just strayed so far away. I did not believe that I was savable. I was a lost cause. I truly believed I was that far gone. And so they said, well, just try, just pray. And it started with that. When I went to treatment, I didn't eat or sleep for the first 2 weeks when I was detoxing. I was coming off of an over 10-year daily IV heroin use to quit in cold turkey. And no, that won't kill you. It'll just make you wish you were dead. And I truly did. I was about to lose my mind. I got just enough sleep that I didn't go insane. And so when I started praying, that was what I was praying for. I was praying for sleep. And I remember after a couple days of praying, I slept for an hour. And that was the best hour of sleep that I can remember getting. But of course I wanted more. So I kept praying. And after another week, I was on a regular schedule of sleeping. I was able to eat. And so I figured, well, if that worked, maybe I could try these 12 steps. And a lot of it didn't make sense to me. I thought that I was smarter than that, but whatever, I'll try it anyways. And, imagine that. I worked through the steps and I received all the promises that these steps say they will give you. The 12-step promises us a spiritual experience. And that was most definitely what I had. It wasn't bright lights and a burning bush and God himself talking to me. It was finally that feeling of peace. And, experiencing that was enough to make me want more of that. Because even though I hadn't used in 2 months, even today, I'm still an addict. And things that I enjoy, I want more of. And so I wanted more of that feeling of peace and happiness. That was my goal going in, was to just be able to be happy with a simple, mundane life, because everything was drama and chaos my whole life. And so, yeah, I gave the steps a chance, and I allowed God to work on me, which was the biggest thing. It wasn't that he couldn't do it; I wasn't allowing him to do it. Again, getting in my own way. And so today, looking back, I realized that as much as I thought I turned my back on God, he was there with me that whole time, because those 10 plus years that I was shooting heroin every day, not once did I overdose. I witnessed my brother, I used with him the most. I witnessed him overdose at least 4 times. And we were doing the same things. But not once did I get to that point. And I know that's because he's looking out for me. Apparently he has plans. I'm still waiting to see what some of those are, but I am happy and trusting that he knows what he's doing. And so today, I've been given the greatest gifts that I could have ever hoped for. I always wanted a family. I wanted a son so that I could raise and him not have to go through the crap that I went through growing up. And he gave me Jackson. And I was fine with that. Jackson is mine. He doesn't have my last name. He doesn't look like me. He doesn't call me dad, but that's my son. And then the most amazing thing happened. After all of that, I knew I'd never have kids. The drugs had ruined that for me. And we find out Jen's pregnant with Lucy. And thinking about that today still, it just amazes me how good he is. And then he never stops, because he gives me that son that will carry on my family name. I always wanted to be able to name my son after me. I wanted there to be 3 of us running around, and he gave me that opportunity. The blessings that I get today from just allowing God to do what he wants to do, allowing him to do his job, are amazing. And to keep this gift of recovery, to keep these gifts that God gives me daily, I have to give it away. And so I enjoy helping others. I enjoy telling my story. I enjoy walking others through the 12 steps, because that's what somebody did for me. Without that, I'm not here. And so I do whatever I can to help spread the word that there is hope, because I know what it's like to be hopeless. I know what it's like to accept the fact that life is no more than this. And it doesn't have to be that way. I'm living proof, and I know I experienced my story, and I know if I can do this, anybody can do this.
Wow. Thank you guys so much for sharing your story. And I think I speak for anyone who's ever heard it and is going to hear it. It's a powerful one. You guys said a couple of things in there that I just wanted to highlight, just for those who are watching in need of that hope. That's some of the things that keep people from reaching out, especially when it comes to drug addiction, alcohol addiction, is usually you're in that addiction because you don't want to feel pain. But there's a pretty excruciating amount of pain when you're ready to fight it. And I think you both have experienced that. And when you run from the pain and you finally have to endure the pain, it's not an easy road. And so you gonna say something?
I was going to ask Jen. Jen, do you think that if someone hadn't reached out to help you get treatment, do you think you would have done that on your own?
I tried to do it on my own. I didn't know anything about recovery. I didn't know anything about AA. I didn't know anything about anything. The only thing I had ever heard of was Suboxone. And so I remember looking through a phone book at Suboxone doctors because I didn't know. I had no idea. I'm like, what's going to help me? I do think I think God would have eventually put something in my path, which I think is what he did with my family and the intervention. So I do think eventually, but I think about that a lot because some people are like, interventions don't work and some people they do, and everybody's story is different. To me, I knew I was already done. I just didn't have that. I just didn't have anything to reach out to and grab onto to say, okay, it's going to be okay. And I had told my family too, when they said they were sending me to rehab, I said, send me somewhere that's going to detox me. Cause the detox is just, it's brutal, and send me somewhere that's not going to talk about God. And looking back on that, it just, it makes me laugh because I'm like, wow, that's exactly who was directing everything. And they did talk about God, a higher power, but God. So, I think, and being a mom and the pain that you go through when you're trying to protect your child, and, a lot of people like my story about cutting off the crust of his sandwiches. Something like that was a bottom for me. I stopped cutting off the crust of his sandwiches. And like some people are like, oh, well, people are out there doing this. I mean, I almost lost my arm to shooting up. I had to have an abscess removed so deep that they said if I would have waited any longer, they would have had to amputate my arm. That was not my bottom. David saved me from an overdose. That was not my bottom. My bottom was the simple things in life. Sitting on a couch in a house full of drugs and needles. And I remember watching the news thinking, I just want to be a normal person who wakes up in the morning and drinks a cup of coffee and cares if there's traffic. Like, I don't, and it was just those type of things. Those were my bottom, those simple things. So I do think I would have answered your question. I do think I would have eventually, but I don't know what it would have been. It was definitely, God was definitely
I can
intervening.
answer your question. No, if she had not helped afford me the opportunity, and then reaching out to the Jake Foundation to get me into treatment, no, because my family doesn't have money. I wasn't working a job with insurance. I had no options for treatment. And so if it wasn't for someone reaching out to me and saying, let me help you, I would be dead now.
And the places that, I mean, when he relapsed, that's the part that he left out, but he relapsed when we came back from treatment. And I won't name places. I almost did just now. And I called them and I'm like, how can I get him in? And they were like, 5,000 down, this much to walk through the door. And I'm like, oh my gosh. So the Jake Foundation is a foundation that we love, and we try to help out as much as possible. And they which is kind of, what you guys are doing. It's getting those resources out there for people, because it's not just I'm done and you walk in somewhere, and, it's a process. And when I talk to parents or wives or whoever, and they say, how do I help this person? You want to give them just one answer and say, do this and everything's going to be fine. But it's such a process. Doesn't mean there's not hope. It just means that, we need those resources.
Yeah, I think, through you guys' story and probably ones you've heard and I've heard, the obstacles, there's a lot of obstacles. And it would be nice if there was one place you could go to that would take care of all of those obstacles. And there usually isn't. But you want, obstacles of facing the pain, financial obstacles, I think people have to get past the willingness of being embarrassed. So pride, the fear of the unknowns. Like, there's just so many, not just physical or material obstacles, but then also internal obstacles that you have to wrestle through. I know you guys mentioned, and I know we got to be careful on time, but I know you mentioned overdoses, and I think, in 2020, I think we've hit records in overdoses, and people who, especially with fentanyl right now, is because you don't know what you're putting in your body, and people can try it for the first time and OD, and so a lot of that is going on, and you just hate to see those numbers. It's just heartbreaking to see. So
I always appreciate your story. I've heard both your stories multiple times, and I always hear something different. But helping addicts is so hard that I need these stories to help give me hope. Sorry. So thank you.
What would you, for those who are watching this and maybe battling addiction, secret addiction, maybe things that, it doesn't have to be drugs or alcohol. There's things that can grip you that are fierce. What would you say? What would you say to them to encourage them to find hope or help?
I would just say, I know you're struggling. I know this isn't where you want to be. It hurts. It sucks. For me, talking to other moms, there's that void inside of us, and we try to fill it with a lot of things, and we try to put our kids to fill that void. And the only thing that we can fill that void with is God. And you said that today in service. I can't put my kids to fill that void, because they will eventually disappoint in some way, shape, or form. So reach out to anybody, your pastor. The police stations now are helping people to get in places. Reach out to another addict in recovery. Facebook is a wonderful place. A lot of people don't like social media, but I have a lot of recovery on Facebook. There's lots of groups. There's so much hope out there. And from mom to mom, walking away from your kids is the most painful thing you can do, but it's also the most ammunition you can give your recovery. For me, at least, that's what that was. That's why I still have a hard time talking about Jackson and not crying, because that was my, that really gave me a boost. So I know it's scary, but just take that first step and it's not an easy road by any means, but it's so worth it, every step of the way, you know, and it's a lifelong journey.
I would definitely say, coming from a place of, I, I I lived at the South High Drive-In movie theater for a summer. I slept in a tent in my sister-in-law's backyard. Uh, you know, I was as low as someone can get, and it took me being able to get to the point where continuing to go on was scarier than the change. You don't have to get that low. There is hope. No matter, I had zero hope. Like I said, I had given up. But I borrowed the hope of someone, and I gave it a shot. The biggest thing that I can say is, don't be ashamed. Reach out for help. There are limited resources, but there are resources. TogetherWeLive.org. Together We Live on Facebook. We're more than happy to help. If we can, if what I've been through, what we are doing, if it can help one person, it's all worth it. There is no such thing as too far gone. I like to believe that I am living proof of that.
Well, I can tell you, if you're watching at Crosslink or within this community, there are 4 people on this stage who will be very committed to walking through the trenches of life with you. And we got a church full of people who will do that as well. And through organizations like Together We Live and other ones, we want to be there to help you walk through even the difficult times. So what's going to happen next is that someone's going to come up and pray. Spend a little time praying for those who are struggling with addiction, families who are struggling with addiction, and then you guys will end in song together. But we hope that this was encouraging to you, but it also gives you the boost or the power to maybe take that step out and reach for help if you need. Please don't leave Crosslink Thursday night, Sunday morning if you know you need to talk to someone. Pull someone aside and have conversations. Just know that we are here for you and we love you, and thank you so much for this. Thank you guys for doing this, and Melissa, thank you so much.
Thank you.
as a body of believers, we get to now go out and give hope to those individuals. I want you to pray for the churches, not only just Crosslink, but the churches in our community, churches across the country. I just ask that God empowers us with the resources, with the heart, with the desire to go out to those individuals and give them hope. So let's go ahead and pray for our churches across the country. And the last but not least thing that I want us to pray for is I want you to specifically reach or lift up someone that doesn't know Christ. We need to pray for the lost. And I pray that in your time here in the next couple of moments, lifting those individuals up and removing our nervousness, our anxiousness to share the gospel with somebody and worrying about what they're going to think about us. We have the opportunity to deliver the hope that God has instilled in us. So let's go ahead and pray for those individuals by name that don't know Christ. Lord, I'm just so thankful for who you are and what you do for me as for these individuals in this room. And sometimes we don't even know that you're doing it. I'm just so thankful that you never, never, never stop pursuing us. Even when we're in our lowest, even when we're in our mess, that you do not stop pursuing us. Lord, I just want to lift up our country, our communities as addiction runs rampant. The enemy is having a heyday right now. And I just pray that you just bring the solution and bring opportunities and bring the funding, bring whatever it needs to be to help solve this problem that we have in our country of addiction, whether it's by drugs or whether it's by sex, whether it's whatever, gambling. Lord, I just pray that you bring yourself. That's the solution. No, money can't do it. You're the only one that can heal. I just also want to lift up our churches. I want to lift up Crosslink. I want to lift up the churches that are here in Grove City specifically as we deal with this. Lord, that we're not, that we don't take a back seat. Instead of allowing things getting taken from us by the enemy, that we start to take back. That we start to go on the offensive and utilize your hope and deliver that hope to those individuals that feel hopeless. Lord, I also want to lift up every name that was spoken here today that doesn't know you. I pray that you give us opportunities and give those individuals opportunities to come encounter with you and be able to hear not only our testimony, our story, but more importantly, hear your story and be able to deliver the hope so that they won't be lost forever. Lord, just thank you so much. As we leave this place, as we leave this comfortable situation, that you make us uncomfortable out there, that we cry and we care and we just strive to deliver the hope. That's the message today, that we can deliver the hope, that break our hearts and break our souls for the things that break yours. Just thank you so much for all the things that you provide for us. In Jesus' name we pray. Amen. Just a couple of announcements and then we'll get everyone out of service. But as you know, we have offering that's the next section of our service here as our worship. And I say it every week, don't take it lightly. This is our opportunity to give back to God. So there's a whole variety of ways that you can give, whether it's text to give, whether it's putting an envelope in the back box or mailing in a check. So don't take that lightly. That's something that we can praise God with what He has given us. Just a few announcements. Youth will start back up tonight, which is exciting. I know my son is excited about youth coming back. But also we are going to be opening up next Sunday down in Kid City. The 2nd through 5th grade will be opening up next week. And I just ask, as we have those kids come, we can't do it with just a few. We need to do it with the many. So if you have a desire, if you have a heart for kids, or just a heart for serving, I just ask that you get in contact with somebody. I know we have a new director down there, but just get in contact with somebody that you would be interested in, get plugged in. So let's go ahead and stand and we'll dismiss. And if you could, when we're done, just go ahead and stack up the chairs. Lord, just thank you again. Just thank you for the opportunity to hear Dave and Jen's story. Thank you for Melissa and the things that she does as well. Thank you for Pastor Jeremy being able to put this together. And as Lord, as we go through this sermon series about how our soul is, that we take it honestly and we do an inventory of our own souls, because we can't give something we don't have. Lord, I just ask that you just continue to pour into us, pour into this church, so that we can pour it out to others. Protect us and keep us safe as we come back next week. In Jesus' name we pray.